Okay, Jimmie Johnson, our 5-time NASCAR Sprint Cup Series champion, driver of the number 48 Lowe's Dover White Chevrolet. This weekend at Bristol Motor Speedway. Good-looking paint scheme. Like that. Fourth in points, 3 victories on the season with 3 to go before the chase. Jimmie, certainly getting the victory lane's got to be at the top of your list.
Yeah, it definitely is. We've clearly had a lot of speed in our race cars, and from a strategy standpoint, pit stops, car performance, driver performance, everything's been going really, really well, and at the right time of the year. So 3 to go, and certainly disappointed in giving up bonus points at Michigan and Pocono, but there's really nothing we can do about that now except look forward at the next 3 races and try to get some more bonus points to start the chase.
All right, a couple questions here for Jimmie. Go ahead. Who's got one? Got 2 right on the far right side. 3, actually. Let's go. 4. Go Alex, Mark, Claire, Jim.
Hey, Jimmie. Alex Goody, ESPN. Just want to ask you, you had talked a lot about this place in years past, about how it was always a really hard track for you to get your head around and wrap around this place. And now the last few years, I think it's actually 6 top 10s in the last 7 races here. You picked up the win here. You've had a lot of success. What's been the key for you, and has there been a change, and what are the keys for a driver getting around this place in your experience?
Yeah, there really has been a change, and it's been with me in the way that I drive the car. And for the longest time, I was driving the track incorrectly, and then we would build a setup to support my driving style here, get into the race, and things wouldn't work. So it's a tough challenge for a driver, and it doesn't matter how long you've been in the sport or what you've accomplished, but there are tracks that challenge each team and driver differently than others. There's some tracks we go to, and I know how to drive it, and I roll right into a rhythm, and I'm good, and we're working on the right things. It didn't happen here for the longest time, and very happy to now understand how to drive the track so that we can tune the car to the way I really need to drive it and what I need in the race, and that's been the biggest difference.
Let's go with Mark, and then we'll go to Claire. Go ahead, please.
Mark Garrow, PRN.
To the right, Jimmie.
Okay. After you have issues team-wide last week, Tony had a problem, you had a problem, Jeff with the motors. What kind of process does Hendrick Motorsports go through, and do you guys come back with the same package at Atlanta or the same parts and pieces to see if that was some kind of anomaly, or do you pull back a little bit to make sure you got something that's good for the chase in the 1.5-mile tracks and the heavy RPM tracks?
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, and I'm always impressed and amazed with our engine shop and how detailed they are, how scientific things really are. The analysis that takes place after a failure, it looks like a bunch of broken parts and pieces to me, but they're able to go through a variety of oil composition tests. They bring in metallurgists. They understand. They can trace it back almost like CSI stuff and find out where it started. And it's impressive to me each time to watch them go through the process. Obviously we hate the failures, and we certainly had some issues at Michigan, but they're working hard on it, and we won't go to the track with something that's untested and unproven. And we have multiple dynos in the engine shop, Spintron machines, a lot of different ways that we can get duty cycles on the engines and test the parts and make sure they're where they need to be. So it's safe to say we were caught off guard with the issues we had at Michigan, and wasn't expected. But the guys are on top of it and making sure that it doesn't happen again.
Let's go with Claire, Jim, Viv, Bernstein. Go ahead, Claire.
Claire B. Lang, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. The passion that you showed last week, leaving the track, showing your frustration the way that you did, is something rare for you, actually. And I wonder kind of what thoughts were going through your head after that all came down. And then also I want to know about the Black Keys song, Howlin' for You, and how you chose that to walk out in driver intros here.
Yeah, it's just a good song. I think that Black Keys are an awesome band, and I'm actually trying to get to one of their concerts this summer, but they head to Europe before long, and I'm afraid I'm going to miss them the way the schedule works out. So I dig the song. I think it will sound great through the PA system, and that's really where that decision came from. And then last week with the emotion, there was so many levels of frustration that came through from gifting a fellow chaser, bonus points, a win. Went through 2 engines that weekend, lost the championship points lead, which is really important to me. All that just came to a head, and wasn't much else to say. I mean, anybody watching clearly knew I had an engine failure and that I was disappointed. So it just didn't make any sense to me to talk with everyone and point out and draw further attention to the engine shop that worked so hard to put me on that racetrack week in and week out. So just decided to not say anything and load up the family and head home. And we'll load up again this weekend and try to win here.
Let's go with Jim, Viv, and then Bob Pockers. Go ahead, Jim.
Jim Noble, ESPN. So when Brad Keselowski points out that his pit crew beat your pit crew on the final stop, and when he points out that there are things going on in the rear end suspensions that might be tricky when he spoke about HMS, is Brad trying to play mind games with you? And if so, how susceptible do you think you and Chad are to mind games at this point?
He likes to talk a lot. He says a lot of different things. I don't know what his strategy is, and honestly, I'm not all that concerned. I mean, he's a very strong driver, a very strong team, and one of 12 that will be in the chase that we need to worry about. So, there's been a lot of discussion during the week, and certainly coming from his post-race interviews, and everybody's entitled to an opinion, but I think you need to have your facts straight and understand, what's going on. Our car's been through inspection multiple times, and there's nothing out of line taking place. So, the pit strategy during the race, they did a great job, and they've been getting amazing fuel mileage, which I think was most notable at the road course at Watkins Glen, and how they were able to stretch gaps and really have the option for a 2 to 3 race fuel strategy, which from our standpoint we only could do a three race strategy. So they were smart with their fuel mileage and did a great job of getting out of the pits, and we missed it, and we thought that we were the leader and the 88 was second, so I let them go and didn't think much of it. And then 4 or 5 laps later, Chad's like, hey, that's some bad news for you. You got to go get him. And we were able to get to him before the caution, and then after the caution got by. But, the chase is going to be very interesting. I think the fans are going to have a very interesting 10 weeks. And there's going to be 12 very capable teams winning that championship, and I'm worried about all of them.
Let's go Viv, Bob Pockers, and then I think we'll end with Paul.
Viv Bernstein, New York Times, over.
To your left there,
one.
Jimmie.
My left, yep.
A little bit off topic. It's fairly commonplace in other major sports. If an athlete fails a drug test, he serves a suspension, whatever, always welcome back to the team, almost always. Obviously, that's different in NASCAR. I'm wondering why it's different, and do you feel like you are held to a different standard because you're so closely aligned with sponsors?
I don't. I think I follow the question. Is it relative? Can you ask it again, maybe a little more in depth? It's per NASCAR, like what goes on in our sport, or
I'm trying
sports?
to compare what happens in NASCAR to what happens in other sports. In other sports, if an athlete fails a drug test, he's likely to be suspended and returned to the team. If a driver fails in NASCAR, it's not that quick, and they may never get a job again.
Yeah.
And so why is NASCAR different, and is it because you're so closely aligned with sponsors?
Yeah, it is. I believe it's all due to sponsor. When you play on a team for a city, you're, in a sense, kind of behind the front office and a part of whatever organization you are. You're not the front person, and the one that is endorsing, sponsorships. If you play for, the Braves, it's not the Lowe's Home Improvement Braves, or you know what I mean. There's a different element there, and you're one of many on that team. Which I guess that correlation exists in NASCAR, but it's different because we are the front, we are the face of that sponsor. When we're competing, we compete kind of as an individual on track versus many on the team, and it just boils down to paying the bills. I guess if you are a fortunate one that can own your own team and drive for it, you could probably weather that storm and handle things differently. But that situation's so rare that it all boils down to the sponsorship dollars.
Let's go with Bob, Paul, and we will end with Marty.
Bob Hocker, Sporting News. With all the talk about the rear end housing, are you concerned about NASCAR making any more rule changes in that area, or do you guys just you work and as long as it's legal, you'll keep working, and then if they tell you you can't do it anymore, then you just adjust after that?
Yeah, I mean, that's all we can do is work to the rule book and what the rules state. And, you know, whenever NASCAR changes the rules, I think it helps us out in particular. We're able to find speed and work through new challenges usually quicker than others. So, you know, whatever the rules are, we're ready to go to work and figure it out.
Paul, in with Marty. Paul's over here to your left, Jimmie.
Paul Woody, Richmond Times-Dispatch. Jimmie, could you talk a minute about what it's like to have Rick Hendrick as an owner, what you like about him, what he makes possible for you to do?
Well, there's obviously the great history at Hendrick Motorsports, and the winning history that exists there is first that comes to mind, but then also the culture that exists at Hendrick Motorsports, and it's really Rick's leadership that's created that. We all know how great of a man he is and how caring and understanding and helpful in so many ways to individuals that work on the team that have tragedy or illness or something going on in their life, to many others, you know, outside of Hendrick Automotive Group or Hendrick Motorsports for that matter. So he's a guy that we all look up to and want to be more like. Working for him, he inspires us all and somehow finds a way to bring the best out of you. And that's a huge attribute for our company, and it's all on him. He's a great people person. Gives us all the tools we need and certainly has high expectations, but he knows how to pull the best out of everyone.
Final question, far right, Marty Smith.
Marty Smith, ESPN. Jimmie, why do you think Gordon reacted the way that he reacted in the race last weekend when he was racing Dale? First of all, what's your reaction to that? And second, how does your expectation of teammates compare in competition to everyone else you're racing?
I haven't really seen much of last week with my frustrations after the race. I assumed that I probably didn't want to tune in and watch much anyway, so I just stayed away. I know Jeff was upset with Junior. I sat in on a meeting Tuesday at Hendrick Motorsports, and both were there, and I couldn't sense an issue anywhere. So, you know, when we put our helmets on and go to work, we sometimes, you know, take our brains out, put the helmet on. There's all those correlations. You get the red mist in the helmet. Things, you know, ignite you, and there's plenty said on the radio that drivers regret saying, and especially when you hear it played back the next day, you're like, man, why did I go off like that? So I assume there's levels of that in there, but when you're around teammates on the track, at times maybe you think you need more room or you deserve more room, and overreact to situations. I'm guilty of it. I think all teammates are and have been through it over the years, but you know, you've got to communicate, you have to talk, and that's the culture, you know, where we work. And again, looking back at the Tuesday meeting that we had, those guys were just fine in the same room talking about race cars. So I think it was just a heat of the moment situation on the racetrack.